Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. So, tonight's show, like all the shows, we're interested in if you want to call in and talk to us about something that's going on in your life that has to do with anything that might be challenging you on an emotional level. That's what I'm here for. So, I encourage you, if you've been waiting to hear from me and to see that I'm back on the air and you are thinking about calling another time, use the numbers that are above the screen, and I'll read them one time for you. And you can call me, and we can talk right away about what's going on for you. And I'll talk with you about emotionally, how are you feeling about what's happening in your life. Ask you whether or not you really think that maybe you want to find a way to change how you're feeling, because you might find that to be helpful. And the show is really about that. It's really helping people who are smart, who are good critical thinkers, who are really excellent problem solvers under normal circumstances, who find themselves stuck, often find that being stuck has a lot to do with how they're feeling. Emotionally, they might be concerned about something internally. They may be concerned about emotionally upsetting someone else that's important to them for one reason or another. In your life, if you have challenges in the workplace, if you have challenges in the home, in your community, anywhere, that you may be a part of a group, a team, an organization, you may be the leader, you may be someone who's just an employee. If you're dealing with something in your world, in any part of it, where you feel stuck emotionally, then use the numbers to call. The numbers are 402-225-0781. That's the phone number. Again, 402-225-0781. And the PIN, after you make the phone call, they'll ask for a PIN, and then the PIN is 882-041-574 and the pound sign. And you can do that at any time during the show. So don't worry about interrupting me. I'm fine. If you want to call, that's really the design of the show is to encourage people to want to call in and find ways to get help for challenges in your life that have strong emotions that are part of what's going on. Because if I can be successful in helping you, and I often am successful in helping callers, then that methodology, that template, that guide, what I call an emotion roadmap, which is a series of questions that start with, so now tell me about your circumstance. And once I understand that, the first question is, so how are you feeling about it? The second is, how do you want to feel? What would be better to feel, perhaps, than what you are feeling? Maybe even ideal to feel. And then, how do we get there? How do we get from what you are feeling to what you want to feel? That's the idea of a roadmap. How do we get from where you are to where you want to be emotionally? And then finally, as we explore options for what might actually work for you, that I would call an emotion-based plan, I ask you to tell me of the things we've discussed. Is there one or two that you might really feel like you're excited to do, you're really willing and able, you also have the capacity to do it, so you're excited and you're capable? Because that's when you have a real emotion-based plan that could work for you. Like any plan, it has a chance of success. If it's well thought out, and I've helped you with it, chances are it's a decent plan, and it might really work just as is. But often plans, like any plans, sometimes need to be modified. You know, hopefully you get your farther along and you move in the right direction, but you may need to modify it, which again starts with, so whatever you tried, how you feeling now, and if it's gotten you closer to how you want to feel, what will it take to get you to the finish line, get you over the goal? Get you over the goal line. What would it take to make you move forward? And you just repeat the process. So in helping you, I want to teach people how to use this process in their lives, because all of us benefit from knowing a strategy that helps us to manage emotions internally as well as to influence the emotions of others. Because we can't really change somebody's emotions, but we certainly can influence how people feel. I hope to do that by influencing you and helping you to feel comfortable making a phone call. Rather than wait and hope that you hear something that might be helpful, if you got something specific that you'd like to talk about, call me at any time. I'm on from 5 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. on most Tuesdays. The Tuesdays that I'm available and the studio is available is when I'm on. So I'm here today. If you've got something you'd like to talk to me about, then feel free to make the call. One thing that may be impacting everybody that's listening is this concept of employment. A number of people have been laid off in recent days for a variety of reasons. Some have to do with artificial intelligence. Some have to do with the economy, changing rules, changing products, companies with new and better ideas than the one that you're working for. There's lots of reasons why companies experience layoffs. And if you happen to find yourself in that unfortunate state, then I'd have to ask you, how are you feeling about it? I've been laid off myself. I've had that experience once. My feeling about it was very uncomfortable. I didn't think it should have happened. I didn't think it was fair. I was upset. But I also was confident in myself. In part, I had the support of my family, and boy, that's certainly important. Because I always believed, and this is so important for all of you who may be laid off or may be a part of an impending layoff that's coming. Do you feel confident in your ability to make a living, to find a way to be employed somehow, to make enough to support yourself, and if you have a partner or a family or others that you care for, can you support them as well? Do you feel that confidence? What would it take to help you to feel confident? That's what I mean about changing feelings. If you're feeling like I was initially when I first was laid off, upset, angry, that's partly what is realistic. I can't ignore the real feelings I had about what happened. It was an unfortunate time, and without going into a lot of detail, I can tell you that, at least for me, it wasn't personal. What happened in my organization was I worked for a company that was part of a larger holding company, they called it, a much larger company that owned a number of companies. The company I was with was one of them. And one of the people in charge realized that the company where I was employed had a lot more people in the human resource functional area than many of the other companies that this large holding company owned. And he said, if other companies need less people in this human resource function, maybe the company that he came from, the company where I worked, they could lay off a bunch of people too at a certain level in the organization and not suffer. And so even though the particular company I was with had record-breaking profits that year, they decided on a wholesale layoff of people at a certain grade level, within a certain set of grade levels. I was a junior executive at the company. I was actually in charge of leadership development. And at that point, I was doing really well, and I had really good connections, and I was feeling really supported by the people in the organization. And yet, when it came time to ask people to step up and say, hey, can you keep Chuck? Most people were kind of ducking in the corners and hiding and feeling like, I'm sorry, I'd love to help you, but there's a lot of people being laid off right now, and I don't want to get that disease. I felt like it was a contagious, I had a contagious disease. So people didn't want to help. It did turn out that there was an opportunity for me to actually stay in the company, but the risk was too great. They were making a lot of things that felt very uncomfortable. And at the time, because of the executive status, they gave me a very good package. And I thought, you know what, I'm better off moving out on my own, because they gave me a time to fund what I wanted to do for myself and my own business, and led to my own consulting business, which I've been in over 30 years. So turned out to be a good thing, but it certainly didn't feel that way at the moment. And if you've had the experience of feeling laid off yourself, if you're in that position or worried about being in that position, what are you doing now? Even if it hasn't happened yet. If you know that your industry is going through a lot of changes and there's a lot of downsizing going on, people sometimes use words to try and change how it feels. They call it right sizing. Like that's going to help. I hate when people make words up just to try to camouflage what's really happening. But in any case, if you think something might be impending, sometimes people's tendency is to just stick their head in the sand like an ostrich and not pay attention and hope for the best and somehow feel like, if you believe in a God, that God's somehow going to take care of you. Well, I tend to be a believer in God, but I don't necessarily count on God to do for me what I'm capable of doing for myself. And so I would suggest to all of you that you not stick your head in the sand, that you begin to explore what's possible, and so that should something happen, even if it's unexpected, where you might be getting laid off in the near term. What are you going to do? What's your plan? Start thinking about how you'll feel, how you want to feel, what would be ideal to feel. Start thinking about how to go into that situation, that circumstance, as unpleasant as it might seem, feeling somewhat confident. The curious thing about change and loss and grieving is that it goes through a general process that kind of works like this. When somebody loses something important to them, it could be a relationship, could be, someone in your family is, you lose a loved one. Could be the loss of a pet, or it could be the loss of an item special to you, something that somebody, grandparent, gave you many years ago that was very precious and you lost it somehow. It could be a number of things that cause you to grieve. And the grieving process, oh, by the way, it could be a loss of a job. That's why I'm talking about this. It could be a loss of anything that's important to you. The grieving process sort of starts like this. You either go through denial, it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me, and you hope for the best, and maybe you're lucky and it doesn't. But that's denial. And then if it does happen to you and you're upset about it and you don't think it's fair at all, you feel it's totally unjustified, then you're angry. So if you're angry, and if that's what's going on, if you're angry, you can understand there's a reason to be angry, and you'll be angry for a while. But angry isn't going to help you find that new job. Angry isn't going to help you move forward. What you want to feel is in a sense of adventure, excitement, curious, open to new ideas, new thoughts, new possibilities. Now, it doesn't happen quickly. You don't go from the anger just because I'm saying it to letting go of the anger. You've got to allow yourself some time to grieve. That's legitimate, and it's going to happen. But sometimes you can kind of push the grieving process hard. You may come back and feel angry about it again another time. But for the moment, at least, what you want to feel is confident and excited. That's what happens progressively anyway. But you may want to push it a bit if you can. And the idea of pushing it is to try to get you to a place where, okay, I thought this might happen. I'm prepared for it mentally. I'm confident I can handle it. And now what comes next? Here's the people I thought I'd call to network. Here's the places I thought I'd look to see what might be available. Here's the plans I've already laid out and the places where I've identified that might have an interest in the kind of potential and the skill set that I have and the experience that I have. So I think it's really important on the front end to always be thinking and planning for what might happen if the place where you work doesn't exist anymore. That it isn't just about you being laid off. Maybe the company gets bought out and everything changes. Or the company just doesn't make payroll and they go bankrupt and they can't stay in business. There's lots of possibilities. I've talked to lots of people over the years. Some who have owned companies that lost their main customers because new innovations came in that people stopped buying from them because the product they had wasn't as cost effective or as effective in general in the sense of what it could do for them as the product that you were selling. So somebody else had a better product and a better cost, and you weren't in business anymore. So there's lots of reasons why change happens. It's sometimes unexpected, and we're not prepared for it. But I'm suggesting be prepared no matter what. Be prepared no matter what. Now, how do you get prepared? What do you look for? And I want to talk about this not just as if you lost your job. You could be just somebody graduating from college who's first looking for a job. You haven't lost anything yet, but you're having a really challenging time trying to find a job. I think that's true for a lot of people these days. Partly, it seems that a lot of people have taken, I don't want to say any course is something that's not useful in terms of learning. Any kind of learning is useful, I think. But some things are more useful than others. For instance, if people are really worried, if you're just coming out of high school, for instance, and you're really worried about artificial intelligence and what it's going to mean in your world, and while you're comfortable with technology, you realize that jobs in the technology space or even in companies where, middle management, marketers, salespeople, copy editors, there might be a lot of jobs where AI can do a lot of what individual human beings used to do or are doing today. And so maybe you decide, I'm not a really comfortable person with a lot of adventure. I like the stability of knowing that I've got full-time work and I'm capable of earning a living, a good living, and I can stay in this area. I don't really have the desire to move all around the world with a big company. And maybe I'd like to stay local. I'm really close with my family, and I want to be in this area. I love where I live. I like visiting other places, but I don't want to live anywhere else. So if you sort of know a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you think you'd like, then maybe you want to look for one of the trades coming out of high school, especially, because I don't see artificial intelligence replacing things like welding or plumbing or electrical work or construction, for that matter. So there are jobs in different areas that I think are going to continue irrespective of artificial intelligence. Now, that the jobs might change, and you may have to keep learning, like what an electrician might have known 20 years ago may not serve that person that well today. So things will change. So I think you want to go through life, hopefully, with the idea that education doesn't stop because you're not going to school anymore. So if you have an openness to change, allow yourself to be open to change, but you have a self-awareness about who you are and what's important to you. And maybe you're somebody who likes adventure and likes to travel and loves being with big companies and wouldn't mind if one company closed you out, that you just join another company someplace else and you're willing to go anywhere on the planet because you have that sense of adventure and you don't want to be tied down yet, or at least at this time, with a family. Or you have a partner who wants to go with you and do those things. And you take your kids with you when you start having kids, if that's your choice in life. But you really want to think a bit about who you are, what you seem to care most about, and then try to carve out a career, a job, something that's going to carry you forward, that's really about fitting in with a lifestyle that you think you're going to be happiest with. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's happy all the time. Nobody is. But just that we have the opportunity to enjoy life at a level that we appreciate because we've understood who we are, what we think and value is important to us, and we act on it. You know, some people say things like, my family is the most important thing in the world to me. And then they move away from their family and don't see them again for years. I don't know. I mean, can you do both? Can you be adventurous and still feed family? Probably you can figure it out. But those who go away and don't really return hardly at all, what do you really value? What's really important to you? So being really thoughtful about what's important is how it starts with finding and landing a good job that is really something that you want and you value, where you feel valued and important. I mean, anybody that owns a home knows how important that the people like an electrician or a plumber is to them, right? I mean, or anybody who's a handyman that can do a lot of odd jobs with fixing a washing machine or fixing a step that's broken or changing, you know, a set of lighting in a room or painting a house. Or there's so many things that are not driven by anything other than your competency and your ability to perform and learn and be open to being good at customer service, knowing how to have a relationship with your customers as well as your family and friends. And that makes for a good life when you have the kind of job that you really find that you feel you value and you feel valued by the job and the people that you support in it. So that's a big part of what I think is important about understanding jobs. Now let me talk about another aspect of it, because, okay, what if you want to join a company? How do you decide what company to join and what you want to do for them? Well, I think it starts with, what do you want to learn first? I know it's tough to decide on majors and colleges and so forth. And there's a lot of people that have gone into, you know, gender studies, studies about, all kinds of things that have to do with culture and race and religion and things like that. And I think it's great to have an education about all those things. At the same time, I say that's great to learn those things. You also want to be looking at, what am I learning that's going to help me be employed? So you want to do both. I love the idea of somebody being educated in the humanities, because I think that really helps quite a bit with critical thinking. I think literature, learning about character development and how people in stories handle circumstances and situations that at some point you might face in life. You get ideas from watching and learning from characters, whether in movies or series that you might watch on Netflix these days or something, but a lot from literature as well. Literature offers the opportunity for more character development typically than something that you might watch. So do you read a lot? And do you learn a lot about lots of ideas and philosophy and the humanities and other subjects that stimulate your mind? At the same time, are you learning a skill set that's going to serve you in the future? Are you learning about engineering? Are you learning about optometry? Are you learning about medicine? Are you learning about law? Are you learning about negotiations? Are you learning about relationship management and customer service? Are you learning skills that are important in the workplace? Because at some point, we're all out there selling ourselves, trying to convince someone who's an employer that we're the right choice for this particular job that we're seeking and that they have a need for. So I think you want to understand, what do you like to do? Do you like taking things apart? Are you somebody who's mechanically oriented? Are you somebody who's really interested in teaching, maybe? Because you really love ideas and you love learning and you really enjoy being part of an education community? Are you somebody who's really interested in the water, in swimming, in boating? Do you love something to do with marinas and taking care of boats in the water, dealing with weather issues, managing the climate change, working in the oil industry as an engineer, as somebody who likes something to do with understanding how the earth moves, shale works? You like knowing about all kinds of things that you might find of interest. Are you interested in space, which is going to be an enormous opportunity, I think, going forward? What's going to happen in terms of all of us moving, whether it's data centers we move into space, or we have storage facilities, or we have satellites, or we have communities that we put on the moon at some point, or some planet someplace. It's going to be a lot that's coming that's going to be innovative and new. But part of this all starts with what's going to work for you. That's going to be something that you're going to be, you don't have to be happy all the time, but at least comfortable with, that you're going to enjoy, and life isn't going to be miserable because you're doing it. What causes people to go into dentistry? What causes people to do something where they want to know about, how do I help people deal with, illness, so medicine, or with anxiety, so psychiatry or counseling, anything, studio production. But maybe you love making videos, and video editing is a big skill at this point in time. Artificial intelligence may take some of those skills, but I think there's always going to be the human element that's part of the creative idea. So I think it's really important that you understand what's important to you and what, in fact, does the world need now. I think that was a song, wasn't it? What the world needs now? But I think you want to think about that. You want to think about, where are the skills that are going to be part of what the world is going to need, and there aren't enough of them. And it's a moving target, because right now there's some wars happening, and there's a lot of submarines and missiles being built. So some of the defense industries are kind of booming right now. Maybe I would love to think we go through a period of time where there's no wars happening, and peace is, the whole planet is peaceful, and we go through a whole number of decades like that, and those industries might lose some of the people that are building weapons right now. So you have to be flexible, but you also want to think about what's there now, where I know at the end of my college graduation, or at the end of my trade school, or at the end of high school, I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm comfortable with the idea that I know the kind of life I'm looking forward to lead. By the way, these things can change. You don't have to stay locked in because you make a decision when you're a young person. You can change. You can change at any time in your life. If you've got a family, then it's a little more complicated, because if you're changing, you want to be changing with your family if you want to keep everybody together, of course. So I think that's important. Another aspect I think that's really important to think about is, what are the competencies needed? How do I learn, for instance, to be a good decision maker? You can actually, it isn't just experience. There are actually educational courses about decision making that allows you to understand the importance, when you make a decision, as an example, of, do you do it alone when you're inside a group? Do you need the group's consensus? Do you need the group's support, total support? Can you arbitrarily decide? Does the boss decide? Does the person who's the leader need everybody's input in order to get supported for the decision? Are there different choices and then different cadres of people who are aligned on one side of an issue, others on another side? So how do you make decisions organizationally that feel like you're being supportive of the people you lead, or the people you work for, or the people you work with? So decision making is a competency. How do you learn to be good at that? Leadership, of course, is a competency. How do you learn to be a good leader? I hope that in the many things that I do online, for newsletters that I might put out, or other ways I try to inform people about how to be an emotionally intelligent leader, how to pay attention to how people feel. I'm struck by the fact that people, for instance, I'm often reading things that say something like, people don't leave organizations, they leave the manager they work for. If it was Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see. I've transformed that a bit to be the leader you want to work for, if you're in a leadership role. But how do you learn to lead? What are the ways that you can learn and teach yourself about leadership? Start early. Take on some projects where you're a project lead in schools, even in junior high school, or middle school, or high school, or college. Take on some roles where you're the leader in certain group activities. A club that you might start, a team that you might have, a band that you might run. Think about ways to build leadership skills. Think about ways to build skills that have to do with how do you give people feedback. It's another critical skill in the workplace. How do you accept feedback? Are you someone who gets very defensive if anybody says to you, hey, Chuck, I got something I'd like to talk with you about. Can we have a moment here? And you figure, oh, my God, they got something they got to say to me, and I know I'm not going to like it. Or do you go into it thinking, well, this is a person I like and trust, so I wonder what they got to say to me, and I wonder if it's something that is going to be something that helps me to grow. Now, I don't know too many people that approach it quite like that, but wouldn't it be great if most of us did? And if it's something that you kind of discount, I would say, oh, I can see why you'd think that, Jane or Mary or Mohammed or whoever you're talking to. I can see why you'd feel that way and why you'd want to say that to me. And I appreciate your saying that. And I'm not defending against this, but I would like you to understand there was a reason I did it that way. And you explained perhaps in that circumstance that was, in your mind at least, that was what was called for. And so you don't see a growth opportunity there. Or they suggest something to you that, you know what, now that you've said that, I can see why that would be harmful or insulting to someone the way I did that or the way I said it. And I'm sorry I did that. And I think I'm going to make that up to them. I'm going to fix that pretty quick. And I'm going to avoid that. And thanks for telling me. I'm going to be more thoughtful about something, anything similar like that comes up. Next time around, I'll be a little more thoughtful and smarter about that. And I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't said something. So thank you for that. Isn't that the way you'd like to handle feedback? So again, learning to handle feedback, but also how do you give feedback? One of the things I've learned over the years is not everybody wants to hear feedback. You know that too already, I'm sure. Well, what do you do? What do you do when you want to deliver feedback to somebody? How do you start? How do you position in the way so the person can hear it? Now, I don't think this is the same for everybody. Some people just say, hey, tell me straight out. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't make it. I just want to hear what you have to say and let me think about it and I'll deal with it. Okay. Or you got people that, just get mad at you for sharing that, for saying that, for thinking that, for believing that. How could you think I would believe that or feel that or do that? Or why would you think that was my intention? That was never my intention. And you become very defensive. That's not unusual for people to do that. So how do you, when you're delivering feedback, avoid that? So again, these are things that you want to think about. What do you need to learn that's going to make you successful? So there's certainly the technical abilities. If you're very good at math, maybe you want to become an actuary, maybe an engineer, maybe a math teacher, maybe a nuclear scientist. Again, what do you think you're good at, and what would you enjoy doing a lot of with the time we have on this planet? That would make days where you're working feel like, you know what, and every day isn't highly enjoyable, but most days I'm pretty comfortable doing what I'm doing. And of course, if you're with people that you enjoy being with, that's a big part of it. Again, as I said to you a moment ago, people don't leave companies typically, they leave managers. That's when you leave on your own. Now, I've talked for a while, so let me just stop and just ask you. Again, if you've got something that you'd like to talk about career-wise, if you think there's something that you've got going on that you'd like to share, you're looking for a job, you're thinking about some ways to do it, and you'd like some help with that, then use the number above me on the screen to call in. You can call in, and you can get some help directly for your specific situation. Again, I'm talking very generally about the things that you want to do. And I'll talk some more about that in a moment, but I do want to give people a chance in case you got something right now where you're out there, you're looking for a job, or you're looking for a promotion. I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward, but for the moment at least, I want to allow you time to call in case you've got something you'd like to chat with me about. Now, it doesn't have to be about work in the workplace, but it can be really about anything, because I'm happy to field any phone calls. I did have a phone call the other day, and that was fun. Fun for me to have a phone call, and I think the woman that called was Tricia. She got some interesting help, I believe, with time management, and I hope that, Tricia, if you're listening, I hope that was helpful to you. But again, if you would like to call, people have called for lots of reasons. I had a lawyer call me once not that long ago that wanted some help with his business because he was nervous about artificial intelligence. I've talked about this before, and he was worried about that. I had somebody call in who was nervous about giving some feedback to her boss. She liked her boss. She liked working there. She's been with the company a lot of years, but her boss does something that's highly annoying to a lot of people. She's sort of okay with it, but she knows it upsets a lot of people, and everybody's afraid to speak to them about it. So she called in to get some help with that. There were people that called in that said, look, I got a really tough colleague that I work with that's constantly sarcastic with me and just generally annoying and frustrating, and I'm really having a hard time. And I like the job and I like the company and I don't want to leave, but I'm wondering what can I do about that. So anyway, there's lots of reasons why you might call about the workplace, but you also might call about, hey, I'm struggling with my child at home. I'm really having a hard time figuring out how to get them to be more focused at school, or to really rethink the crowd that they're hanging around with, or to help them. They're really struggling with the idea of even if they want to go to school or college after high school, or again, lots and lots of things that you may have an interest in calling about and talking about. And honestly, I've worked in all these areas. You know, I've worked with the largest companies in the world, and you know, most of the military organizations in the United States, and whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, I've worked with all of them. I've worked with some government officials. I've worked in local and state and government. So if you've got something that you want to talk to me about, again, I've worked with small companies, medium-sized companies, big companies, and schools. So if there's anything that I can help you with, give me a call. The number, again, is 402. This is the phone number now. 402-225-0781. And after you dial that number, you can, then it will ask you for put in a PIN. And the PIN is 882-041-574 and the pound sign. And then you're talking to me. So if you think I've got something I've said that you're interested in, even if you've got a question about anything I've talked about, this is a good time to call. I've got about another 13 minutes or so to talk to you. All right, so let me tell you an enhancement now on, let's assume you're not worried about being laid off and that you are in a company where the company is being successful and you want to be promoted. Now, what's the best way to be promoted? How do you go about that? Well, it probably is different, and each company has some unique norms, you know, sort of behaviors that are acceptable. So some companies you can be very clear about just saying, I'd like this job in this time frame for this much money, and I want to know what's it going to take for me to get there, and what realistically can I expect around what I'm hoping to have here. And maybe you can just have that conversation very, very straightforward. Some companies you can do that. Other companies are very uncomfortable with that. Some companies do a very rigorous job looking at everybody that they consider to be high potential, meaning that they have more than one level of promotions that they're likely to be able to handle. So, for instance, if you're a manager, maybe you can be a director, and then maybe you can be an assistant vice president, and then maybe you have enough capability to be a vice president. Maybe somebody looks at you and says, no, this person can actually be the president of the company. They're that good. And even though they're at a low level right now, let's think about the career path we want to put them on so that we give them the exposure to the different areas of the company. So when they do get to be president, should that happen, they really understand all the different aspects of how we do business and all the different parts of the operation, and they're really knowledgeable about each part so that they know what to expect and what to ask for and what to demand from different aspects of the organization. Good companies do that kind of work, but most companies don't, truthfully. And so a lot of times it's left to the individual to try and figure this out. And even for the companies that do it and do it well, think about how you'd feel if you're a leader in an organization and you have a manager who comes to you and says, hey, Mac, can we talk? I'd like to talk about career. And I'd like to talk about it in terms of where I think the organization has some need. And I want to just check with you to see if I'm right about what the organization may need. And also the skill set that I have and whether or not I might be a candidate for helping to fill that need. I have some ideas about that. Could we take some time to chat about that? Now, I'd feel like, well, okay, that's a pretty thorough kind of request. That's thoughtful. Sounds like it's been planned out. Okay, yeah, why don't we set aside a time? And then we get together and I say, okay, so here in the organization, and let's assume that in that organization you're a part of, you said, you know what? We're pretty strong in certain areas of the organization, like it's a manufacturing company. Manufacturing, we're good. We have marketing, and marketing seems pretty good. And sales looks okay. I think finance, though, we don't always make the right decisions, I think, in finance. And that's impacting our ability to perform well, because if we make some wrong decisions in finance, we choose to buy certain equipment or don't choose to buy certain things to raise our ability to be, increase productivity, then perhaps we're going to suffer and we're not going to be as competitive as we could be. And I think finance needs some help. And I think I've demonstrated over time that I have pretty good analytic skills. I've shown you that I can manage a budget, that I understand in our area where I've been in charge of the financial aspects for our particular department. I think I've done a fairly good job there. What I don't have, and what I haven't experienced yet, is, a lot around strategic needs for the company and how our department might view that in terms of what our strategic goals for our department are, and how to think about finance for a strategy in terms of what we do in the parts of the company where we're active, and we have some controls. And I'd like to have more project work in that area, because I think I could really help in the finance department if I was given the opportunity to do more strategic work. Would you agree that's a need, first of all? And if your leader says, I don't want to talk about somebody else's department, that I'm not that comfortable doing that, but will we benefit from somebody that was really good strategically and really good financially at the same time, and was able to influence the decision making that was happening coming out of that department in ways that benefited the organization overall? The answer has to be yes. We would definitely benefit from that. And do I think that you might be a candidate for that? I have to give that some thought, but I do appreciate what you've said, and I don't disagree with anything you've said. And let me think a bit about how to involve you more strategically in what the company needs are, and see if you can do some of that work for our department. And perhaps that's a way to at least explore what we're talking about. So to me, that is a very productive, proactive way of looking at how do you advocate for yourself in a way that says, I didn't just come here saying I want to be promoted. I've been really thoughtful about what the company needs, and I'd start with that first. So it isn't just about you. And when somebody hears that you're thinking about what the company needs, they're thinking of you as somebody, one, that's loyal, that's thoughtful, that's smart, that's strategic, and that gives you a leg up over a lot of other people that are going to come in and also have a lot of the same skills you might have, but haven't been thoughtful in that way or addressed it in that way. So if you want to help yourself in a way that helps you to be at least considered for promotability, have a plan. Have a plan that's based on real needs. Have a plan that's based on real expectations. Or, again, this is something where you might think the company has a weakness. Another thing to think about as you're thinking about ways for you perhaps to get promoted is, Who do you know that's likely to advance in the next year or two? Who is in the high potential category that has been in a role for 2 years? Typically, what a company might ask is 1.5 to 2 years for somebody to be in a role that has the potential to go very high in an organization, and they're likely to move them out. Well, who's their backup? They may have a plan for a backup, and it may not be you, but what if you put your name in the running by going to them and saying, look, I understand that, hey, Jesus has done an amazing job, and he's really well thought of in the organization. He's likely to be promoted to AVP level and maybe not even in the same department, so that director level position is going to become available. Now, I think once that position becomes available, my guess is there may be candidates already named for it who you're thinking about, but I'd like to be considered for that. And could I spend a few minutes telling you why? And also tell you what I think I'm really strong at and what else I think I need in order to be positioned for that. And even if I didn't get that, I'd like to learn that skill set anyway. So should another opportunity like that show up, I'll be available and ready. So I think it's really important to understand that when something is impacting you career-wise, whether it's about a promotion or just simply getting employment, I think it really behooves you to think about, what can I do emotionally? What can I do emotionally to give myself the feeling of confidence that I can handle this, that I'm going to be okay, that my family, if I'm already in a company, that my family's going to be okay, that I'm going to continue to find ways to be able to be supportive. And one of the things I know that people are uncomfortable with sometimes is the idea of selling themselves or selling in general. For some reason, sales, because we've got this image of somebody who's selling us something that we don't need, that it kind of makes sales sort of uncomfortable for people. And I think that's another emotional obstacle that many people face. I think you want to figure out, how do I get past that as an obstacle? How do I feel like sales is just part of life? I'm always trying to influence people on my ideas, and that's selling. Sales and influence aren't all that different. The connotation is, we think of sales much more negatively than we think of influence, and yet the skill set isn't all that different. So don't be afraid of sales. Don't be afraid of the idea of selling yourself. Don't be afraid of being confident. I think confident isn't the same as overconfident. And you want to be careful you don't cross that line. You don't want to be arrogant. And if somebody says, you know what, I don't agree that you have that skill set. Okay, then maybe from that person's perception, that's their truth. You can tell them that, well, they're wrong and you have it, but if they don't see it and feel it and think it, it's not real to them. And so my response to something like that would be, well, okay, what would convince you? What would it take for me to convince you that I actually do have that skill set? Because I actually think I do, but I understand if you don't see it or you haven't seen it, that you have a different perspective, and I value your perspective. You're very important to me, what you think. And so I'd like to work to change that. What would it take? What would it mean for me to demonstrate? What would I need to do to demonstrate that I have those skills? Tell me so we could work on this together. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So I hope, as you think about the world of work, all the challenges that we all face in going and getting a job and holding it, and then getting advancement and promotion if that's what we're seeking. I hope I've given you some ideas about the emotional side of this and ways that you can be prepared more thoughtfully and more proactively to deal with seeking employment and then seeking advancement within that company in ways that most people don't really recognize or think about. So hopefully you're going to be more thoughtful going forward. You're going to be more creative about the way you approach these things. You're going to be more emotionally confident and competent than many other people while you're out there seeking these kind of roles, either as a first-time job seeker, and also knowing something about what you're going to value and what you care about and where you want to live and how you want to live. All those things go into it, and I hope I've given you some food for thought. And I really wish you well, and I thank you all for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. I'm Chuck Wolf. This is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And the show's been about career guidance, employment, and confidence and competence. Finding ways to make it work for you and for those you care about. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day, and I'll be on Tuesdays from 5 p.m. at this station on CJ Wolf 5 or on the Simsbury Media Station. Thanks, and I wish